Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sky News Breakfast. It's another setback for the travel sector. From Tuesday, anyone entering the UK will have to take a pre-departure COVID test. The government says it's a temporary measure following an increase in cases of the new Omicron strain linked to foreign travel. Well, the move has been welcomed by Labour, but travel officials describe it as a hammer blow. Let's take you through the latest rules. From 4 a.m. on Tuesday, anyone travelling to the UK from countries not on the red list has to take a pre-departure test a maximum of 48 hours before leaving. That's regardless of their vaccination status. Nigeria in West Africa has become the 11th country to be added to the government's red travel list. And as in the case with those travelling from other red list countries, only British and Irish nationals will be allowed into the UK and must isolate in a government-managed quarantine hotel for 10 days. These new rules follow last week's announcement that all international travellers are now required to take a PCR test upon arrival in the UK. Well, the new rules come as a further 25 cases of the Omicron variant have been identified in England, bringing the total to 129. Scotland has also identified a further case, taking the total there to 30. And as it stands, just one case has been identified in Wales, and there are no confirmed cases in Northern Ireland. That means a total of Omicron cases across the UK is 160. Sky's Dan Whitehead reports now on the impacts of the new variant.
As Omicron spreads, the borders are tightening yet again. From Tuesday, anyone arriving in the UK will need to provide a negative PCR or lateral flow test, taken no more than 48 hours before departure.
We're seeing increasing number of cases linked to travel. And again, we've always said we will act swiftly if we need to, if the changing data requires that. And that's why we've decided to bring in this change. Of course, it is something that's going to particularly hit people that had travel plans. And that is hugely unfortunate. But I think the vast majority of people understand exactly why it is important to take action.
Receiving her booster jab, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been calling for the reintroduction of pre-departure tests. But those in the travel industry say it's a step backwards.
I'm afraid it's not good news for the travel sector, and it's certainly not good news for airlines who were hoping to benefit from an uplift really over the Christmas period. We're going back several months. It's taking us back effectively to May. The worst hit sector will be the inbound sector, both tourism, leisure tourism and business travel, for those coming into the UK who simply won't bother. They won't want to take all these tests.
So just drop it down by your side for me, nice and relaxed, thank you.
The announcement comes as the government ramps up its rollout of COVID boosters.
Hopefully, this vaccine, there is some evidence so far that it is still gonna help. So hopefully the big push before January is gonna hopefully solve it.
We've been waiting for our period until we could book, as soon as we could book. So we're very keen to come down. I have to say the organisation, as with our first two jabs, has been fantastic.
The Prime Minister says vaccination centres will be popping up like Christmas trees in the coming days. And while more jabs are going into arms, there's also a fresh push to get expectant mothers vaccinated.
The phone calls are being told that, that I may not survive.
A new video released by the NHS hears from mothers who suffered complications while giving birth due to COVID. Emma Hockridge is due in February and contracted COVID just last month. Having just had her booster, she has a clear message to other expectant mums.
Speak to my midwife and get independent advice, not look online, not read horror stories on Facebook, but to get independent advice from them. Because they have all the data, they've got the history, the science.
The booster campaign comes as the NHS is already facing winter pressure, while millions of extra jabs are the main defence at home. The threat of Omicron coming in from abroad means tougher travel rules are back. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Well, let's go live now to Heathrow and to our correspondent Shingi Mararike. And Shingi, the rules for travellers changing very quickly.
They are. Good morning. Those changes will affect people travelling here into Heathrow and airports across the country. And they mean from 4 a.m. on Tuesday, people travelling into the UK will have to take a lateral flow or a PCR test before they depart where they are coming from. And also, it's interesting, these changes are taking place off the back of this new information about the incubation period of the Omicron variant. It's thought that the gap between people being infected with the variant and them being able to pass it on is shorter than other variants of the virus. We now know also, off the back of that announcement by Sajid Javid, that there will be an addition to the red list as well. Nigeria will be put on that list of countries as well. The government is pointing to the fact that there were 21 cases of the new variant linked to travel from Nigeria. Unsurprisingly, those changes by the government have been met with fury by the travel industry, who called it a hammer blow over the course of the very busy Christmas period. The British Travel Association, their chief executive, come up with a very punchy statement earlier today saying that public safety is a priority, but businesses will fail, travellers will be stranded, and livelihoods devastated by the lack of coherent plans from government. The government says that these changes are only temporary while they understand a bit more about the Omicron variant and they gather more scientific information. I think it's fair to say that the travel industry will certainly hope so.
Xingyi, thank you. Our reports this morning suggest that there could soon be a new treatment for coronavirus patients. Sky News understands a letter has gone out to health officials detailing the rollout of an antiviral pill for anyone who tests positive for the virus. The Sunday Telegraph claims the drug called molnupiravir could soon be offered to the most vulnerable patients. Now, the sentences for the killers of 6-year-old Arthur Labinjo-Hughes will be reviewed by the Attorney General to determine whether they were too low. And this comes after Solihull MP Julian Knight said that the jail terms given to Arthur's father, Thomas Hughes, and his partner, Emma Tustin, were far too lenient. The Prime Minister is also expected to launch a national inquiry into the murder to try to prevent such a tragedy happening again. Well, our political correspondent, Rob Powell, is in Westminster for us now. So, Rob, just tell us more about what we know about this possible inquiry.
Not a lot yet, actually, Vanessa. We know that there is potentially going to be some sort of announcement today into a wider investigation. The Sunday Times are reporting this morning that will be a wider inquiry ordered by the Prime Minister that will pull in various other public bodies to examine their part in the tragic murder of Arthur Labinjo-Hughes. So that could involve bodies like the police, schools, social services, probation watchdogs as well. I think if it is announced, they will have plenty to look at. First and foremost will clearly be why warnings from members of Arthur's family and also teachers were apparently not heeded, why social workers had gone to the home days before he was killed, and essentially given the situation the all clear. We've heard from a former Conservative minister this week saying that social workers need to be supported to essentially be able to dig deeper into concerning cases and ask more probing and sometimes awkward questions. I think another part of this could potentially be the impact of COVID policies and lockdown. A lot of this abuse happened when schools were shut. And of course, his murder happened towards the end of the first set of lockdown restrictions. We heard a lot at the time about the potential for lockdown and schools closing down to increase abuse behind closed doors. And then I think finally attention may well be put on whether social services and child protection departments have the resources that they need. Local councils that run these sorts of services have seen huge cuts over the last 10 years. Lord Laming, who conducted the inquiry into the deaths of Victoria Clombier and baby Peter Connolly, has said in the last day or two that he believes cuts to resources and funding has had an impact over the last 10 years. Now, I don't think it's any surprise that Boris Johnson will want to try and be swift and move fast to announce something like this. The next couple of days, I think we will see an increased focus on law and order with other unconnected policy announcements around that. Ultimately, I guess what matters is what politicians do rather than what they say, and whether it goes far enough to stop any more tragic incidents like the one we've seen in Solihull.
Rob in Westminster, thank you. In other news, at least 13 people have died and dozens more have been injured after a volcano erupted in Indonesia. Well, let's speak to our Southeast Asia correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, who joins us now. Siobhan, just bring us up to date with the latest.
Well, we're starting to get pictures from that disaster zone now. Pictures showing houses submerged in thick mud, cars only visible from the tops of their roofs after the volcano erupted yesterday on the island of Java, taking many residents by surprise. More than 900 people have had to flee their homes. We know 13 people have been killed, more than 50 people in hospital, some of them with very, very severe burns from the hot lava. And then also problems with this cold lava, which is mixed with rivers, has rushed through villages, bringing this thick mud with it, taken out a bridge as well. And the rain is continuing to hamper the rescue efforts. We know that the Indonesian Air Force is now on the scene helping rescue teams, but very, very difficult conditions there on the island of Java in Indonesia.
Siobhan, thank you. And more than 4,500 homes remain without power this morning, 9 days after Storm Arwen. The Prime Minister has spoken by phone to those leading the emergency response. Well, Stephen Bridget is a councillor in the Northumberland town of Rothbury who joins us now. Thanks for your time this morning. What's the situation like where you are at the moment?
Good morning, Vanessa. At the moment, basically, we were down to around about the last 120, 150 properties at the close of play yesterday. We had significant rainfall and wind hit again last night, and that pretty much wiped out all of the good work that had been achieved for the last 3 or 4 days. And we're now back up to over 600 properties that are still without power. Some of them went off around about, I think it was about 6, 7 o'clock last night, and they're still yet to return on.
So the number of homes going up then, are they still off the power there?
They are, as of this morning, they are still off the power, and we've got significant surface water flooding happening in this area this morning as well. So some of the roads are starting to flood because we've literally pretty much had constant rainfall now for 12 to 14 hours. I haven't had a chance to check the river levels, but it started off as snow and then has progressed into heavy rainfall with winds.
I spoke to Tim Farron, who's MP for Westmoreland and Lonsdale, on this programme yesterday, and he criticised the government's response, but he did praise the local response in the area. How would you say the response has been so far?
From a local level, I would absolutely agree. For the Fire and Rescue Service, the County Council, the Mountain Rescue, Northumbria Police has been absolutely fantastic. But in my view, a major incident should have been called earlier on in the week. And I think that came down to more politics than actual practicalities, in my view.
Do you think that Boris Johnson should have been there at this stage?
No, I think a major incident can only be declared at a local level by the local authority. And I think my understanding is, as a member of the local authority, politics may have played a decision in it. But I believe officers eventually took control and said, no, we're declaring it. And that's where we are. But that will be investigated at a later date.
I'm trying to get a sense of who's affected at the moment and where they are, where they're getting any support, because obviously they won't be able to stay in their homes, will they?
No, we've got around about 20 residents who are in alternative accommodation, and that option is available to any other resident that needs alternative accommodation. We've got thousands of candles, batteries, water, logs, kindling, which are available at collection points in Rothbury and Whittingham. So anyone that wants to come down to Rothbury today and collect it, the welfare centre will be open, providing hot drinks and hot food. And with the latest power cut and it increasing by more than, 3-4 times now, we're expecting a pretty good number to come through the door today if Northern Power Grid can't get those back on that they've got back on earlier this week.
Now, the Chief Executive of Ofgem criticised the lack of communication between customers and the power companies, somebody whom I also spoke to yesterday. What is it that you're hearing from the people you're speaking to? How is the communication now?
So significant power cuts are a regular thing in this area. So I've got all of the direct contact numbers for the ladies and gentlemen at Northern Power Grid that normally deal with this area. So from my perspective, it's been very easy to contact them. But I know for resident, and I've been trying to update residents on my social media as a result of that. But for residents themselves, the website, the contact centre is absolutely next to useless. There are waiting times of an hour. Sometimes the website doesn't load and the information on it is automated. It's not accurate. So the best intelligence you can get is from the engineers on the ground reporting back to their managers, and that's who I've been speaking to.
I mean, with what you just said, do you think that you are prepared if something like this happens again? Because we're going to see more and more of this, aren't we, especially with climate change?
We've had significant flooding, we've had significant winter storms, we've had a week with no gas. We are a pretty tough and resilient community in this area, and we are absolutely prepared. I can't speak for the rest of Northumberland, but certainly in this neck of the woods, we are prepared, we're tough, we're resilient, and we've knocked on all of the doors that have been off this week to check on residents more than 3 times now. And we will need to do that again with the increase in numbers of properties that were cut off from power as of last night.
So how's your day looking today then? Where are you going in the area? What's on your schedule?
I'm averaging in about 3 hours night's sleep since last Friday, as you can probably tell. So today we open the rest centre at 9 o'clock, and it's going to be a pretty long day. We've got fire service, police personnel and military personnel arriving again today. We're waiting for the latest data from Northern Power Grid that will tell us which exact properties are off again, and it will be a job. We will be door knocking on every one of those properties, because for some of them, with landlines still being down and no mobile phone reception, it really is the only way to communicate with them.
Excellent. And now we can just show you the pictures now, which is the Northern Power Grid website. That's just showing you the extent of the damage that's caused at the moment. And those are ongoing power cuts that you can see across northern England that you can see at the moment. Very extensive. I mean, Stephen, you've just touched on your day ahead there. So it's looking like a very busy day for you.
An exceptionally busy day. I would say that I had a look at the Northern Power Grid website just before, and some of the information on that isn't quite accurate. There are areas that are back on that are marked as being off, but then there are a significant number of areas that are marked as being on who are actually off as a result of the power cut last night. But yes, it is going to be a busy day. We will be delivering firewood as well, and candles and batteries, and we've managed to obtain some butane gas cylinders for camping stoves and gas heaters for residents. So we will be coordinating that with Northumbria Police, the fire service and the military, who were a fantastic support yesterday and really did complement the local services that we've got on the ground here.
Stephen Bridget, councillor in the Northumberland town of Rothbury. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. At the 2019 general election, Boris Johnson swept into power off the back of Red Wall landslide, and he's vowed to repay those who voted for him. A government white paper on levelling up in Britain is due before Christmas, but what it take to help rebuild northern towns and cities? And what's the potential political fallout from the government if it fails to deliver on its promises? Trevor Phillips reports now from Humberside.
The old market town of Goole in the East Riding of Yorkshire, home to Britain's most inland port. Once at the heart of Britain's coal export drive, like many northern towns, Goole has suffered from a steady, post-industrial decline. Just a few miles away, along the Humber, they're building the platform for Goole's future prosperity. The German transport company Siemens is developing this site into a £200 million manufacturing facility. They have orders to build the next generation of rolling stock for customers including the London Underground. And the company is dug in for the long haul.
We are a business to community, being in the community, working in the community, taking the knowledge we have, imparting that into the community, inspiring people, giving people a pride and a sense of place. I think that's been lacking in many places.
Siemens' promotion of a primary engineering programme to help get these kids trained up in the necessary skills for jobs at the factory is already proving to be a big hit.
If big companies like Siemens keep investing in places like Goole, then I'm really optimistic, because they give opportunities for young people to invest in their own area if they want to, because there's the structures there to do that, and they can work at any level.
It's almost impossible not to be uplifted by the optimism that we've found here. And it's not just the jobs or the new infrastructure. It is the sense that this town has found a purpose again, and that it will have status and respect and even a bit of love. But to make levelling up work, this is going to have to happen in hundreds of places across the country. And if it doesn't, Boris Johnson and his government are going to pay a pretty high political price.
It's high stakes for the Prime Minister as well, because this is what he'll be remembered by. Does he make levelling up a reality? He wants it to be a reality, but can he push it through government? Can he push it through Treasury? And there's real question marks there. And a government that can't deliver more successful towns is a government that will have a lot of questions to answer at the next general election.
Boris Johnson has already marked his place in history as the Prime Minister who succeeded in his promise to deliver Brexit. A new government white paper on levelling up is due this side of Christmas. The Prime Minister wants to be remembered for keeping his promise to those who gifted him with a landslide. If he doesn't, the season of goodwill he's enjoyed so far in towns like Goole could rapidly freeze into a winter of discontent. Trevor Phillips, Sky News, Goole.
Just a reminder that Trevor will be here later this morning on Trevor Phillips on Sunday. And his guests today include Justice Secretary Dominic Raab. And you can watch that interview live here on Sky News from 8:30 this morning. And do join the conversation also on social media with the hashtag Phillips. Now, just to update you on some breaking news that's coming in, reports from Indonesia say that 7 people are missing following the serious volcanic eruption. At least 13 people have died after Mount Semeru erupted following heavy rain. And dozens more people have been taken to hospital. So that's the latest there. 7 people are missing following that serious volcanic eruption in Indonesia, and at least 13 people have died. Now, an enthralling Formula One battle could be decided this evening. Front-runner Max Verstappen is 8 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton going into the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. And to be a title contender, it takes more than just a fast car. Well, I'm now joined by Daniel Ricciardos, performance coach, Michael Italiano. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. So that is the big question, isn't it? What does it take then to perform at the highest level?
Yeah, good morning, Vanessa. That's a good question. Formula One is, I guess, a sport that's very, very physically and mentally demanding that not many people actually know about. So, yeah, it's the big one is G-force. Obviously, G-force is the gravitational pull that these guys experience with these extremely fast cars. And then you've also got the high temperatures that these guys have to deal with being in the cockpit at like 50 degrees in fire-resistant racing suits. So keeping the body cool is actually very difficult as well. And then you've got the concentration factor when they've got 20 buttons on the steering wheel and they're trying to drive this car as fast as they can for 2 hours. It's very demanding. And this race circuit in general, the Saudi Arabian race circuit, is going to be a big one. It's very fast. I think there's about 27 corners. So I think we're going to see plenty of action today.
So talk us through some of the work that you do with Daniel.
Yeah, so my job as a performance coach is pretty much to prepare him to perform. So I'm with him every race weekend. So I'm doing his training, his nutrition, and also his mental coaching. So there's quite a lot involved. We're with each other probably about 270 days of the year. We're with each other a lot. So you also have to get along with your driver as well.
Now, as spectators, we probably underestimate the physical demands of an F1 driver. Can you just give us some insight? For example, how many hours do they dedicate to the gym each week?
Yeah, we're training every day, especially the neck. The neck is the one main muscle that experiences the most G-force across a race. So why you need to keep your neck strong is because usually when these guys are driving, to be able to judge a corner, your head and your eye line needs to be straight and level. If your neck's not strong and your head is moving side to side, you're not going to drive very smoothly and you're going to lose lap time. So keeping the neck strong is very important. So a lot of hours in the gym, a lot of neck training, which is just quite fun to do, and a lot of cardiovascular training as well. A lot of running, and with a lot of hiking as well.
And I can speak with authority that I do none of that at all, and I spend 0 hours in the gym. Now, this is one of the closest finishers to the Drivers' Championship. So who is your pick then for the title?
Yeah, look, I'm gonna go with experience. I think Lewis would do it. in my opinion. I think he's 7-time world champ. He knows how to win. He knows how to get it done. So yes, he's 8 points behind, but I do think he's gonna do it.
And Daniel has openly talked about his mental health problems this year, hasn't he? And is there any work that you do with him to help him to manage this?
Yeah. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we haven't been able to go back home to Australia to see family and friends, and that's something we're not really used to, because usually, we will see them throughout the year. So a little bit of homesickness has kicked in, I won't lie. And it's important, I think, to make sure that you have a very close-knit internal group of a team that's can be supportive to you, can be a sounding board, and just make sure that be there for each other. So that's one thing that Daniel does have. He has a strong internal team. I think also having your hobbies outside of Formula One also helps mentally as well, just to make sure that we can actually just zone out of F1, because it can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster at times. So we do have our hobbies, and just to be mates and just be friends and just do fun things, because the calendar can be so demanding.
And also, you've known Daniel for a long time, haven't you? Just tell us, how long have you known him? How long have you worked with him for?
I've known him since I was 13. We've been working together for just over 4 years now. So we do have that bit of an advantage to on our side, especially during COVID times. And when we are feeling homesick, we are mates. So there are times where we just be mates and do fun stuff together, and just trying to ignore the external pressures of not being able to see family and the demanding nature of Formula One itself.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much indeed for your time, Michael Italiano, who's Daniel Ricciardo's performance. Well, with us this morning to review the papers are the anthropologist Mariana Hotta and the broadcaster Gemma Forte, and they join me now. Thank you very much indeed. It's good to see both of you. Let's just kick off with F1. Actually, I've just been speaking to one of our guests on F1, which is a very big day. But Lewis Hamilton, and this whole talk of links with Grenfell. I'll come to you there, Gemma. Just shed some light on this for us.
OK, so it turns out that one of the sponsors that was going to be all over Hamilton's car, for branding-wise, is Kingspan. Now, Kingspan supplied the combustible insulation that was on the Grenfell Towers, of course, which that tragedy was as recent as 2017, of course, and it's still extremely raw and a very, very sensitive subject for so many reasons. So there was a lot of alarm, a lot of dismay. And I do understand, Lewis Hamilton, he's in pole position. I'd imagine in this particular sport as well, it's so dangerous and the focus is on the sport. And yet it's a bit disingenuous, I think, to sort of say, oh, well, it wasn't my decision, which I'm sure it wasn't. But he's kind of came out and said, well, it's nothing to do with me. The team signed the sponsors. The only one I've ever brought to the table was Tommy Hilfiger. So he was almost a bit reluctant to get embroiled with it. However, I think when you're such a powerful figure in sport, you have such a huge reputation, it is down to you to be involved. And, you're going to be driving in that car. It is you are the brand, you are the face, you are the name, you are the sports person. So, perhaps do get involved with who you're going to use as sponsors going forward and have that involvement.
Absolutely. That's a strong message there, actually. You can't just take a back seat, can you? You've got to be playing more of an active role in there. Marianne, I'll come to you with this next story, because COVID is here. COVID is here. Did we know this at all? But all-in-one test could detect COVID, flu and lung viruses. This sounds impressive stuff. Just tell us more about this.
Yeah, this is a really interesting piece of cutting-edge science, really. So the company, lots of pharmaceutical companies are involved in, obviously, creating vaccines and creating all those testing kits that we have knocking around the house, or when you have to go and get a PCR test because you've got symptoms. So one of the companies that produces the PCR tests that we're currently using, that are being used on our behalves in laboratories, is developing a test, or has now developed a test that could do what they're calling a winter panel, so that you do the same kind of nose and throat swab, and then it would be tested not just for COVID, the COVID virus, but also for the common cold and also another common respiratory virus called RSV. We don't specifically need to know what that is, but basically the situation that lots of us are in at the moment and have been for the past few months of kind of going, well, I've got this headache, I've got mild flu-y cold symptoms. Don't know, is that COVID? Is it a cough or a cold that my kid picked up at school? Some people are going, maybe it's all right. It's probably not COVID. Some people are going, maybe it is COVID, and panicking. And obviously, there's a knock-on implication for how disruptive that is for our day-to-day lives, the impact on our healthcare systems. So perhaps a test like this would be able to, in one go, eliminate COVID and also potentially tell you what you do have. So if it's common cold, then go home, wrap up warm, paracetamol, a hot lemon drink, and have an evening in. If it's COVID, then obviously take the necessary precautions. So this is very exciting, and hats off to our research scientists once again for leading us through this global crisis.
Absolutely. My goodness, are we so thankful indeed. Let me come to the next story with you, Gemma, because this is a story about Storm Arwen, a week on, and so many people still don't have any power. And actually, interestingly, I spoke to Tim Farron yesterday on this programme, and he's the MP for Westmoreland and Lonsdale. And something that he said, if this had happened in Kensington, for example, then Boris Johnson would have reacted quicker. What's your take on this?
Well, quite possibly, as you say, if it happened maybe in the home counties or Surrey, maybe he would have bothered to go there. I mean, do you remember when we had the flooding and it took him days and days to bother going? And I think it's when you're talking about levelling up as part of an agenda, this really doesn't show that you're taking that seriously, because this Storm Arwen and this horrible outage of power has affected thousands of homes in the northeast and Scotland. And when you think how cold it is at the moment, I mean, I have to caveat this with thinking about homeless people at the moment as well. Of course, the minute the temperatures drop this low, your heart does go out to them. And I had a boiler break once when I had a newborn years ago, and we were just without heat for a couple of days. And I've never forgotten it. It was so miserable. We were sleeping in coats, and again, you really think about homeless people, but my heart goes out. There's going to be elderly people, vulnerable people, people with newborn babies, people with small children, just people full stop, who will be absolutely desperate at this point. And lots of people saying this is all to do with bad infrastructure, lack of investment, finding it difficult to find parts to be replaced because they're so old. But you just think in 2021, for people, thousands of people, to be without power for this long, I can't imagine how they must be feeling. What a miserable period. And I hope that it's resolved quickly. And yes, Ed Miliband's been criticising the government as well and saying exactly what you said, sort of reiterating what Tim Farron said.
Absolutely. Well, let's just show you the Northern Power Grid website, actually, and this shows the current situation at the moment. So you can see the number of people still without power. And actually this morning, one of my guests that I spoke to this morning, one of the councillors, councillor for Rothbury, actually said that reports that there are more homes that have been cut off overnight, and we will definitely be following that. We are actually live in Northumberland after 8 o'clock, so staying right across that for you. And this next story that I'll come to you, this is something that we've been hearing about, and we know we've been seeing happening, Mary-Anne. I'll come to you there. Banks will be disappearing from all UK high streets by 2032. And the horror, until you are running around looking for a bank and you can't find it, which is the experience I've had recently, and you realise that most of the banks in your high streets are just gone.
Yeah, that's right. So in 2015, there were almost 9,000 branches. And by this summer, TSB have announced that they're going to close 70 more branches. And so the number will be down to 4,500. There are already areas that have no branches of bank. And to some extent, I mean, having a bank branch is neither here nor there if it's not your bank. Fundamentally, obviously, there's a huge societal shift now to cashless transactions. People don't use checks anymore, so there are fewer of those over-the-counter transactions. You don't need to go into the bank quite so regularly as perhaps you might have once. But that's incumbent on being digitally connected, that you can access your bank through your phone or online, that you have those skills, that you have that confidence, that you know that you can navigate that system. And that's not true of everybody. And it ties in as well to this whole levelling up agenda, not so much north-south in this circumstance, but in people who either have the kind of means to have a kind of smartphone, they can update their apps, that they're confident, that they've got that digital literacy, versus people who might not have had those advantages and don't have those skill sets. And so to some extent you go, well, that's the nature of things. Banking is going to move online, that's fine. But that has to come with, hand in hand with, alternative services being provided for people who, elderly people, for example, who want to access their pension and don't want to have to go to a cash machine, get all their cash out, stand in the high street trying to get it in their bag and be vulnerable in that regard. We need to actually support people to do this digital transition safely and confidently. Otherwise, we're leaving people behind.
Absolutely. And let me just very quickly go to you. We're running out of time, but Gemma, I'll come to you very quickly because we want to end with some music, a bit of techno music from Berlin.
Yes, this is Berlin's DJs gathering together, trying to get cultural heritage status for techno, so that they can protect it, so that clubs can stay open, so they can get funding, and that it's seen as a legitimate social force. This has happened for Amsterdam's Pride. It's happened for Jamaican reggae. It also happens for things like Slovakian bagpiping and more traditional forms of music. But it's basically saying techno is important. It's a big positive force that brings people together, and we need to keep these destinations open.
Thank you so much indeed to both of you. Marianne Hotter, Gemma Forte, thank you so much. I'll be back after this break.